We've talked many times about what happens when the lights go out. What happens when that day actually does come. And I say all the time, it's best to have a plan. Now, we've talked about different survival tactics, and we will continue to talk about survival tactics. But I think one of the most important things to do here, if anyone can out there, is put yourself in a situation, maybe on a weekend, sometime when you can find the time to make this happen. Actually practice the scenario of being in a lights out, grid down type of situation. Practicing this can only help you in surviving down the road and to educate you and those around you. People are going to find out the hard way when it hits the fan that there's a lot of things that they thought that they were going to be able to do that they're just not going to be able to do. There's going to be a lot of panic, and you don't want to be caught in a situation like that. Now, some of you may remember the big blackout that hit the East Coast a while back. And here recently, Delta had a huge blackout that they try to say was a power outage. Although the Georgia Electric Company stepped up and said, no, this is squarely Delta's fault. A lot of questions there, but it was down for 6 hours and it absolutely wreaked havoc on everything. So what happens if this goes down long term? I'm assuming that most people out there turn the cheek. They think that it will never happen. Therefore, they will never have a plan, and they will be among the masses that fall into the chaos if this ever does happen. Now, the problem is this. We've talked about EMPs or attacks on the grid. We've even seen out west them cutting the cables. California, Arizona, multiple times. Even plotted attacks on the power grid. That took place in California too. They were sniping at a facility. Very weird stuff happening in Texas. But what most people don't realize is that our power grid structure here in this country is broke down into 3 elements. You have the Eastern Interconnection, which you can see here, which serves a bulk of the country. Then the Western Interconnection. And then you have Texas. What's very interesting, I want you to all remember this. If you've ever wondered why Texas gets a grid of its own, well, according to the Texas Tribune, they have their own grid to avoid dealing with the feds. Now, that's true survivalist savvy in theory. That's right. Texas has all of its own stuff set up to not deal with the feds. And you wonder why we see all these staged events and things targeting and attacking Texas at this point. This is how it works, though. You see, if the Western Interconnection was to fall out, this whole grid is set up to where the next quadrant, the Eastern Interconnection, would catch that load. So if you put all your eggs in this Western basket and the bottom fell out, all of it would fall into the next basket, which could not handle the load, and it will override it. It will all collapse down, and Texas pulls a little bit off of each of those two. But what would truly happen in a situation like that? If everything started to collapse, the only thing that I'm seeing here is that Texas potentially could be the only one still going with the lights on. Unless they were attacked independently from inside. Or if it all started there. If you take out that little independent section there first, it will affect the other ones, and it could be all that's needed to try to throw things off balance at some point. And it's really a situation no one wants to talk about, no one wants to face. But the reality is this. The United States has more blackouts than any other civilized country on the planet. And they've done nothing since 2014, and a lot of the talk came out about our infrastructure failing. They've done nothing to fix it. Other countries are taking steps and precautions, doing other things. We're not. We're not. At least our government, the people that we put in power to handle these things, they don't seem to care. But I just want people to think about it for a minute when it comes to the power grid. And I want you to realize how they will collapse down into one another. And really, Texas has it going on here with having their own independent power supply. And it's something I think many other states need to be looking into. And I know they have the oil production, have everything else down there going for them. But there's so many different avenues, so many different ways that you can take this. Just to have one system that could power your house off the elements would be huge. And we talked about that before too. In them trying to come down and say you can't catch your own water, you can't do this, you can't have a wood-burning stove, and in these other places, they're stripping away your freedoms and wanting you to depend on them. When everyone depends on them, they could pull the carpet out from everyone at one point and lead to chaos. And see, in a situation like that, that's when the government becomes, in their eyes, the good guy. When they can send in troops and martial law, because they will be seen as, oh, there's the guys with foods, blankets. Take us to a warm shower that may be your last. They've been prepping for an in-game scenario in this country for the longest time, so when it happens, don't think for a minute that they're not prepared for it. Because they are. And people will go running and diving into the back of those military vehicles thinking that it's a safe haven, when in the end, most of you's best bet is to lay back in your own neck of the woods and not be going anywhere with any military, coming together, growing your own crops, your own food. And like I said, you're better off getting out there and testing yourself right now. You're going to see that you can't use your cell phone, you can't use your house phone. What happens when you can't even drive? Do you have any other vehicles, any other bikes? Do you have any wagons, rope? Have anything to till up the dirt? Do you even have seeds to plant? Do you have a local water supply? If so, where can you purify it to drink it? And then in turn, you're not going to have the microwaves and the stoves. You're going to have to cook over the fire. Do you have the tools and everything that you need just to make a meal over the fire? Just, those are some of the basic things people need to get down first. And above all that, what about medicine? We've talked about so many things before. What about medicine? It hasn't been talked about enough, in my opinion, because here lately I've been thinking about it, because all the people that I know that are diabetic, listen, when the banks close, that pharmacy closes. And I know so many people out here that only get the 30-day supply when it comes to that insulin. And I'm telling you now, if a grid was to go down for over a month and people cannot get their medication, that's when people start dying. Friends and family that we all know, because they can't get the simple stuff that they need. And this is why I say you need to stock up. You need to have a plan. We need to have access to those medical supplies at a decent or cheap rate, because you can get it cheaper outside of the U.S. You just have to find it online and find a trusted source, one in which I've been looking for a long while now. And maybe I've come across something good. If we can work something out to where people out there can have an avenue to get arthritis medicine, heart medicine, and everything else for cheap and legally through a licensed pharmacist, then there we go. But it's being able to take advantage and being able to find the right people out there that are willing to do that. They actually care about the people, and because so many other people out here just take it like the guy with the AIDS medicine. He took it and he jacked it like 10,000% up just to make money. That's sick. That's sad. Someone should be thrown in jail for doing that. I mean, yeah, we understand it's a business. You have to make money, but at the same time, man, this is a medicine to save lives. But see, that's the greed in someone. You know, that medicine should be made cheap to where anyone that needs it can get their hands on it. But that's not the world we live in. This world could be a utopia, but they are destroying it. And they will continue, like parasites, destroying their host. until somebody steps up to make the change. And see, I also talked about Underground World News here the other night. These executive orders that got put out. And matter of fact, I'm going to do another video on them because they're so important, specifically talking about them. Because they were talking about replacing the U.S. Deputy of Treasury, the Secretary of Treasury, Veterans Affairs leadership, the leaders of the EPA. They basically said, these executive orders, if your bosses do not show up for work because they are dead or something else, then you were to step up and fill their position. And they did this through multiple branches, and it's very eerie. Why would they be sending out by executive order commands, ordering people to step up and fill the shoes of the top dogs in each of these branches if they're dead or missing all of a sudden? Huge, huge red flags. You can find that on whitehouse.gov. It's real. Something's going on. And they're preparing for it right in the wide open if you know where to look and you're paying attention. They release a lot of these executive orders quietly while no one is paying attention, and the mainstream media will never talk about this stuff. But in the end, all I can stress is have a plan, guys. Seriously, get out there, put yourself in a test-type environment. Test yourself. Just do it. May learn something, be able to teach somebody something else, and you may get to open the eyes of others, really see where you sit in a crisis situation, see how unprepared you really are. Because I don't want to see people get swept away in the madness, man. We've been out here trying to wake up people for too long, man. It's time to have a plan, guys. Serious. Get with it. It's been Dabu 7.